Hi, my name is Hansen, and I'm a retired tugboat captain. I was the last independent tugboat operator in Fells Point, and I operated the tug Athena that was built in 1939. I operated her for 15 years out of Fells Point. And if you have any questions about that time and what kind of work I did and where we go and what we did, and you can go ahead and feel free to ask me the questions, and I'll answer them as good as I can. Okay, so there was no request for any request anyway, so I'm just going to quickly go over what kind of tows we used to do with my tug out of Baltimore. And basically it was the caustic barge that we would haul up to Philadelphia or down to Norfolk, and then bring it up here to Curtis Bay and pump it off. But in between we would get all kinds of jobs. You know, we would tow some mud barges, we would tow, sometimes we would help out docking ships, and we would help out when they built the tunnels out here, and this, that and the other, whatever came. We did some container barges for a while, and so, you know, it was just a little bit of everything. Whatever would come our way, we would do. And one time we actually got a call. It was a tug that had lost a wheel down in the Hansen River, which is in New Jersey, and it goes up from the Delaware River up into New Jersey there, and that's a tidal job. And we went there, and I couldn't get a mate, so we just went down there because I figured that boat had a captain and a mate on it, so they could, you know, once I got down there, they could take over. So we got down there, we got hooked up to that tug, the disabled tug, and the barge, and we coming out of there. And once we got outside in the Delaware Bay there, I was really tired because now I've been up for 24 hours. So I told the captain over there in the other tug that he could take over, and we were supposed to go up to Wilmington and drop off these tug and barge. So after about an hour and a half, the engineer came and woke me up. And that was the engineer from the other tug. He came and woke me up. He says, you better get up here because it's something not right. So I got up, and it was a snow blizzard. We couldn't see a thing. And I asked the guy, I says, where are we at? And he told me where we were at, and I looked at the radar, but it didn't look just right to me. It looked strange. And then I heard two pilots from ships talking. And they were saying there's a little tug with towing another tug and a barge way down here at Brown's, you know, Brown's Shoal, and be careful because he's kind of running all over the place. And then I looked at the radar again, and I realized that the guy had gone the wrong way. Instead of going up the river, he was going down the river. So I said, let's get down here, let's get outside the channel and drop the anchor. And I'm going to bed, and don't wake me for 6 hours. So that's the end of that story. But that stuff like that happened, but since we're close to Thanksgiving, I got a story that I like to tell, and it may sound like a sea story, but it's not. It's actually the truth. And I was this was either 73 or 74. And I was the AB deckhand on a big twin screw 4200 horsepower tug with an upper wheelhouse, and we were married to a 150,000 barrel barge. And our main job, it was owned by NEPCO, New England Petroleum, and our main job, and run by McAllister. So we actually worked for McAllister, but the owners were NEPCO. and our main job was to supply a big power station, Niagara Mohawk Power Station in Oswego, New York, which is in Lake Ontario, and we would have to go to Montreal or Quebec, which was 24 hours to Montreal light from Oswego, and then 36 hours loaded back to Oswego with 100,000 barrels of oil. We couldn't load it all the way because they were going to be able to see over in the seaway. So, and then sometime we would go down all the way down to the Bay of St. Lawrence and load off a ship. But we could only work up there in the summertime. And December the 15th, we had to be in Montreal because that's when they closed the seaway. And there was a couple of times where we barely made it out of there because the ice builds up in the locks, and they can't close they can't open the lock doors. Ice gets in between, and so and then we had a long time leaving there. One time we got stuck in a little place in Dalhousie. It was called Dalhousie on the north shore of New Brunswick, and we were there for Christmas and New Year's, pretty much frozen in, and waiting for weather, because every 36 hours you have another gale up there, and in between you have a snowstorm, freezing. It freezes down to 22, so we were kind of stuck there in this little town, and on one side of the street was a paper mill by the water, and the other side of the street was in the middle of the street was railroad tracks, and there was a train that went over to Montreal from there. I don't know how, it must have gone across a bridge somewhere, and then there was all these little stores, and they were like wooden shacks basically, just one story. And the closer we got to Christmas, the emptier the store were. And there was a little, and we had nothing to do because we were just sitting there. So, and there was two gin mills in town. One was a country and western place with a Chinese country and western singer, and the other one was like what do they call again? The ones with the flashing lights, disco. And the Mi'kmaq Indians they were hanging in there. They were carrying trash bags full of marijuana. That was back in the good old days when you could drink and smoke pot. And but then after that, since the company that owned the barge and the tug, they also owned part of the refinery down in Freeport, Bahamas. So during the whole winter we would work out of Freeport and kind of go over to Florida, to West Palm Beach and Miami and different places with black oil. And one time, a couple times, we would load 100,000 barrels of black oil and take it over to Port Canaveral. And we would just sit there and wait, because there was a small tug in a barge that took 10,000 barrels, and he would come and load and then run way up the river to a power station. It took him like 3 days for a round trip, so we would be there for a long time. We would sit there. There was a little bait store that also had a cooler with beer, and we'd sit on the liar's bench outside and watch the rockets go up, because that was back in the 70s, in the early 70s, when they were shooting up a lot of rockets. And sometime at night we would go over to Cocoa Beach and watch the floor show over there. And it was just the time, I don't know if any of you guys are old enough to remember that there was a stripper, and she was only like 17 years old, but she put on a hell of a show. And this crew from a nuclear sub, they invited her down, and she was stripping on on the galley table down at this nuclear sub, and I guess word got out, and there was a big stink about it, and the captain got fired. So, but anyway, we left there. We loaded the barge with 100,000 barrels of black oil, and the barge was 465 feet long and 70 foot wide, and loaded like that, it would have about a 6 foot freeboard. And then we headed from there to, we were going up to New York, and of course it's winter time, and soon after we left, the weather got shitty, and the 2 tankermen on the barge, they had to ride the tug, so they disappeared into one of the rooms, and we didn't see them for 2 weeks. And so this was Thanksgiving afternoon, maybe around 3:30 or 3 o'clock or something like that, and I was on the mate's watch. So I'm sitting in the galley, had this long table, and down one end was a thing come out there with a door, and there was a shower and a toilet in there, and then there was a door back to the fiddly where the wash machine and dryer, and then into the engine room. And on this side was a big electric stove, and over on the side over here was the sink, was the double sink, and then like here was the big refrigerator freezers. And when you walked around that side, there was a room into where the 2 deckhands lived, and then there was a door with a very steep stairway going up to the second landing, where the captain's room and the captain and the mates and the 2 engineers had their room, and then there was another set of steps going up to the lower engine room. I mean to the lower wheelhouse, and over here behind, on that side over here, was the door into the where the cook and the ordinary seaman lived, and so we were like 12-man crew, I guess, with the 2 tankermen, and I'm sitting here over here. I kind of had myself stuck in because the weather was getting really bad. And we were towing really slow because the trip before we had broke the hawser. The cable broke right on the stern, and the tug was drifting for 2 or 3 days before we could get on it and pull the cable up, and then attach emergency hawser. So when you have big heavy seas like that and a loaded barge, you just have to slow down, because the cable, even that the thing is 1,800, 2,000 feet behind, the cable will come tight, and that's when it breaks if the tug goes down this way and the barge go back that way. So you just have to slow down, so you have a catenary in the cable, and the cable is 2 inches thick. So I'm sitting back there reading my book, and the cook guy, he was from North Carolina, his name was Roy, and he's sitting on this little chair. Actually, it looked very much like this one here. It was metal and with a nice seat and a vinyl back, and then on each leg was this big round metal, stainless steel metal thing, so it wouldn't dig down into the vinyl floor, and the boat would go way up, and then shake like this, and then go down, and then shake, and it would go on like that, and Roy was he had told me earlier that he was part Cherokee and part Irish and part Jewish, and something bad always happened to him, and he was really a melancholy guy. He would really weigh heavily on him, and he was divorced from his wife, and she was an alcoholic, so he had gotten custody of his 2 kids that was like 8 or 10 or something like that, and his girlfriend was watching the kids. But the ex-wife would get drunk, and then she'd go to the school and steal the kids. And every day at noon time, the captain would call up the office in Philadelphia on the single sideband, and they would say, "Oh, tell the cook that his ex-wife stole the kids." And then there was nothing he could do about it, but he would be really, I mean, really down in the dumps. And so anyway, Roy's sitting on this chair and he's peeling potatoes. On the stove was a big pot boiling, and it was locked in with this contraption that you have on all boats to hold pots and pans in different places so they won't slide around. And then he would be peeling these potatoes and sliding. So he would slide over to the trash can and dump the potato peel, and then he slide over and dump a potato in the pot, and then slide back over here and grab a potato out of this thing he had over there full of potatoes, and he would go back and forth like that, and every once in a while he would slide over in front of this big stove, and there was a big bar like that, and he opened up, and there was a turkey, the biggest turkey I ever seen, must have been 30 pounds, was in there, and it was getting nice and brown, and he'd look at it, and then he'd baste it a little bit and close it again, and then when the thing got up, he would slide, he didn't even have to move because he would just slide back and forth. And then that went on for a while, and then every once in a while the boat would just bang into a big sea and go up, and then the bow would come crashing down, and I don't know if you ever seen these big 747s where they train the astronauts. When they dive, you become weightless, and you actually, every once in a while, it looked like Roy was actually floating in the air because he was weightless. So I'm watching him, and he's, I'm reading and watching him, and then all of a sudden I see him, he's over there, he opens the door to baste the turkey again, and the boat comes up, and down, and bang, here comes the turkey out of the oven. and it's bouncing around all over the place, and in the meantime it's greasing the linoleum floor too. So now he's sliding, and he's trying to catch the damn turkey, and he's sliding after it, and the turkey gets over, it got caught over in the corner, and he got a hold of it and pulled up, but it was so hot he had to let it go. And then he goes over and he opens the door, and he got two big forks out, and then he's chasing this turkey around. I mean, he's sliding. Every time the boat rolled, he slides over this way, and the turkey rolls, and he's chasing this big goddamn turkey around. And then all of a sudden he gets a hold of it, and the door to the oven is still open. He gets a hold of it. He gets over there and he gets it back in the oven and smacks the door closed. And he rolls over and he puts the fork and the knife in the sink or whatever, and then he turns around and he has this great big smile on his face. And then he saw me. He didn't realize I was there, and his shoulders just came down like this. It was like the weight of the trailer tears and the Irish famine and the Holocaust all hit him at one time, and he had this horrible look in his face, and I said, "Roy, if you don't say anything, I won't say anything." And he had a great big smile on his face, and then he grabbed him up and he started to mop up the floor. And that evening I made sure I had white meat. But that's the end of the story. But these things happen, but you never hear about them because people think it's a lie.